Dr. David Chao, I hope you're having an awesome day. Welcome into the game here in Tuscaloosa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Chao, am I saying it correctly? It is Chao, it's not Chao, is it?
It's Chao, but that's okay.
Okay, my apologies. So it is Chao. Okay, my apologies. So, Dr. David Chao, I kind of curious. Let's lay out, because you're providing some analysis that we need, because in this business, it was a void that we just didn't have to lean on people that have expertise. And I am so happy that you're in the business, and I'm glad we were able to connect this morning and talk about your interest. How did you kind of feel this to get involved and create this void of kind of fulfilling that need?
Well, I was a former NFL team physician, was 33 when I started, younger than a bunch of the players, and got married late in life, and then all of a sudden had boy-girl twins and decided it was time to stop. Was sitting on the couch watching football for the first time, and an announcer was saying, "Oh, he looks like he's okay. He just walked off the field. He should be fine coming back." And I said, "Well, no, he tore his ACL. He's not coming back today." And my wife turns to me in a kind way, says, "Tell it to someone who cares, and sign me up for Twitter."
Ha! Awesome. Well, our spouses do that from time to time. I know my wife does it. Says, "Hey, go talk to your friends on Twitter." But I've enjoyed your analysis with multiple different things. And so you've launched a website, ProFootballdoc.com. Talk about the website and what your goal is with that.
Well, the website is to provide injury information in a more comprehensive fashion than on Twitter. Twitter is so fleeting. For example, any Tua comments that go on there will be searchable. So 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, you still have it, or beginning of the season. And essentially, it's the most authoritative and best tool for fantasy players, DFS players, and quite honestly, gamblers. I don't know in Alabama if gambling's legal yet, but it's likely coming. It's in about 20 states now. And information is really key. And so right now, we just started this last year. We developed some great momentum. We're still on a growth spurt. You can sign up with a website and with your email and a password for free at ProFootballdoc.com. No strings attached, no credit cards. And you can see draft information. But the other thing you could get, if you're into it, is XFL information. And quite honestly, there's a lot of inequities in the lines going on right now because there's so little known about injuries. And we provide what we feel is the most authoritative spot for injuries and how it affects outcomes, performances in fantasy, DFS, or gambling.
Dr. David Chao with us right now, a veteran of this business. He's an orthopedic surgeon. Now, Dr. David Chao, you're also doing this in addition to your responsibility as an orthopedic surgeon, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's still my day job. This football stuff is a passion, and for those who don't realize what we do is, there's a lot of misinformation, be it on the college level or even on the pro level. What does questionable really mean? We break down questionable knee means this player has an MCL sprain grade 2 and he will or won't play, or if he does play, this is how effective he might or might not be, and that's off of my experience. Now, this is all done from afar. No one's violating HIPAA. I'm not calling team doctors or personal doctors of players to get the information. It's all what I call insider knowledge, not insider information. And obviously there's a big difference between the two.
Let's go back to Mississippi State. Alabama playing Mississippi State. Tua rolls out to the left-hand side of the football field, has the injury. Can you kind of walk us through when you hear about it, when you see about it? Because immediately we were looking for somebody, and you were one of the first to begin to put YouTube videos, begin to put audio video things up, and begin to kind of help us understand what you were looking at and what the injuries that might be associated with that type of injury. What was going through your mind when you see that injury from Tua?
Well, I was actually at Costco with my 7-year-old boy-girl twins and 2-year-old, and we were looking at what samples they wanted to eat when my phone started to explode in terms of text messages, but also Twitter notifications in terms of of people tweeting at me, DMing, and otherwise, as Fowlers are apt to do. I mean, Tua is arguably the biggest star in college football at the time, and so I actually have not posted any video of my own. I have retweeted video that people sent me on what happened with Tua, and it was very clear to me in real time, looking at the video, albeit on my cell phone, 2,500 miles away in San Diego, California, that he had dislocated his hip. Of course, I wasn't able to tell how big or small the associated hip acetabular fracture was, but certainly he dislocated his hip, and that's one of the bigger injuries that you can get on a football field.
When you look at his recovery, Nick Saban uses so many different systems to make sure that these players are maximized with great surgeons like yourself, with the equipment, the rehab. But it seems like, is he a little bit of ahead of schedule, or just maybe kind of what you expected?
Well, I mean, kind of what we expected. I always try and do an NFL axiom: never too high, never too low, right? I mean, let's stay more even keeled. It's a bad injury. Let's take the good news of so far there's no avascular necrosis, which is a lack of blood flow to the head of the hip, which is what spelled the demise for Bo Jackson in his NFL career. So that's good news. But, when you take news like, the CT scan shows his fracture is healed. Well, of course it healed. The fractures always heal. The healing of the fracture was never the concern. The concern is how much motion he has, any arthritis that he might develop, and, of course, the AVN issue. On the other hand, it's not doom and gloom, because there was Twitter video posted of him at Combine, and he had a slight hitch in his gait and a slight limp. Well, I mean, he's not quite 3 months from the injury and surgery. It's not surprising he's going to have a little bit of a limp. Look, I saw him in Miami at the Super Bowl, by the way, talked to him and his parents, and I was always a fan and rooting for him, but you know this in Tuscaloosa, I'm sure. He is how you want every collegiate athlete to be, a pro player to be, as humble as they are, as nice as they are, well-grounded, family guy, parents there. I was already rooting for him, but I couldn't be rooting for him anymore. But as he walked away, I certainly noticed a hitch to his gait and a limp. But I wasn't going to video that and post that on Twitter, per se. But let me tell you, his gait from Miami at the Super Bowl to this week at Combines has already improved. So he's on the right trend. I do believe he will throw for his personal pro day. He's probably not going to run and do all the agility drills. He's on track for a nice recovery. And, hopefully he doesn't develop any arthritis down the road.
When you look at him, do you expect that, I mean, if anything, medicine is a practice. We look at it, we evaluate it, but we're, it's hard to look into a crystal ball and say, well, if he tweaks it, that may do a little setback. But do you think he'll play in 2020? I mean, do you think he'll be ready to go when fall camp starts up, that he'll be able to work out for an NFL team, the one that he gets drafted for in some of these OTAs, and be ready to play in 2020?
Well, of course it's a projection, and of course I haven't seen or I haven't examined Tua. Of course I've seen him physically, but that wasn't an examination, just speaking to him, and have not looked at his MRI, CT scan, or bone scan. And if I had, I wouldn't be able to talk publicly because of privacy laws, HIPAA laws, et cetera. But with that caveat, I do think he projects to be ready to play this NFL season. Now, will he play? Will he be with a team that lets him learn behind somebody? Will they give him more of a chance because perhaps he isn't full go in some of the OTAs and off-season workouts? That may be the case. But I do believe physically he will be able to go come this season. And let's just say, remember, he's a dual threat, right? He's an excellent pocket passer, and he can move, and he's among the top in being mobile. Let's say he makes a nice recovery and is 90% of his previous speed and mobility. That's still better than the vast majority of the league in terms of what he can do. So I do project him to do quite well, and I'm rooting for him to do so.
Being a 17-year NFL veteran of the sports medicine field, how does strength and conditioning correlate with injuries? Because I don't have the medical background, obviously, that you do, but, if I think about an ACL, I think about taking the quad and the hamstring and strengthen that muscle, but then strengthening the leg. And I think about the weakness of that leg would be some of the ligaments in the knees. When I think about ACL injuries, what is the correlation between strength conditioning and injuries, and how that kind of goes hand in hand?
Well, it does go hand in hand, and even to the extent of how talented the athlete is. I mean, the guy who could be in third gear and still avoid the hit or the tackle does better than the guy who's running in fourth gear and harder to change directions, right? The guy who can stop on a dime and cut and avoid trouble before it comes probably stays healthier than the one that can't. And some of that is strength and conditioning. Some of it is bad luck. I mean, Tua's obviously had 3 surgeries between his ankle and his hip. And who can predict 2 defenders jumping on his back in an awkward position with that hip dislocation? And to follow up on the previous answer in terms of judgment, you got to understand, and I think you were hinting at this, and I should expound on this for your listeners, that it's not black and white medicine. It is the practice of medicine. It is no different than one GM saying Mitch Trubisky is at the top of my draft, and another GM saying Patrick Mahomes is not at the top of my draft, and another GM saying I'm going to trade up and get Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, it is as much art as it is science, and the art of evaluating players for talent, but also evaluating players for injury in terms of projecting 6 months or even 6 years down the road. And there is some art to that, and there will be some differences of opinion from the various team positions that are at the combines right now.
Dr. David Chao, I'm curious, being a team physician for the NFL, would this something that would require a lot? Let's say if I wanted to draft Tua and I'm the general manager, would they come to you and say, would you sign off on this? I mean, being a team physician, would you have to sign off and say, yes, I think Tua is going to be able to respond and that, he's going to be healthy enough that we can take a chance on him?
Yes and no. We talk about literally all 330 players at the combines and what their physicals mean. So in some sense, we quote sign off or don't sign off on 330 some players, as well as free agents that come through physicals. But on the other hand, what I've always told GMs that have asked me, I said, look, I'm giving you a medical grade. This is his relative risk. This is his relative health. This is what you might worry about and might be in his future. It's like saying the guy runs a slow 40 or a fast 40, but if he has game speed, it's the GM's job to decide whether to draft him at that position or not. I'm providing medical information. And if I were there evaluating Tua or any player, that would be a similar process. And the ultimate decision on whether to draft a player is up to the GM or coach or ownership or however the power is divided. I will say that when I first started in the NFL, and it was, let's say, mid to late 90s, there was a lot of, he's our first-round pick. Will he be able to be our left tackle for the next 15 years? That kind of was the mindset. But I can tell you towards the end of my time, which would have been the early teens, 2013 or so, it became, can he get through his first contract of 4 or 5 years? And on that basis, I believe Tua can, and this is why I said for a while that I believe he still will end up in the top part of the draft, because teams and GMs don't have that 12, 15-year mentality anymore. I think they look a little more short-term, and after that, it's all gravy. And that's why I think he's going to impress people and do very well.
Dr. David Chao, can I slip in a couple of more questions? I know I've only asked you for about 15 minutes, but I want to be respectful of your time. It's
Sure.
The stuff that you're asking or answering here is so fascinating. What can you do, moving away from Tua just for a minute, Alabama has had a ton of injuries. Some of that's just because of the competitive nature of a program like Alabama. But what can you do to prevent injuries from happening? Because, we've had a lot of bad luck, and sometimes you try to evaluate. We've got some of the best, coaches, trainers, doctors that are part of this team. What can you do to prevent injuries?
Well, you can do whatever you can do, which is, try and select players that are in the best shape possible. Train them, strength and conditioning training, train them, prophylactically train them for proprioception and balance to avoid ACL tears, do appropriate acclimation and warm-up and load management. But even with all of that, I mean, there still is the component of luck or bad luck. Remember, football is not a contact sport. It is a collision sport. And therefore, there are going to be injuries that happen, not to continue to focus on Tua. But I think it's a sham if anyone thinks that kid is injury-prone. I mean, yes, he's had 3 surgeries in the last 2 years, but the ankle surgeries were a little bit of a different story. But in any case, their 3 injuries were all traumatic in nature. It's because of the competition that he faced and some bad luck. I don't believe that he's injury-prone, so to speak. But in the end, I know the doctors and trainers get a lot of the blame if something happens. But I've had this conversation with my GMs before when they've been upset at, oh, why do we have this injury and whatever. And I'm like, look, I'm Paul Revere. I'm not the British. I'm telling you the injury is here. I didn't, cause the injury. And so we do what we can to prevent it, but it still is football. And then we do whatever we can to get them back. But that's kind of my take on it.
Hey, final question. Are you a fan of the tightrope procedure? Do you think that's a good thing for high ankle sprains?
Well, maybe I'll tweet it back out here. The tightrope procedure, first of all, the tightrope is a device, and there are different tightrope type devices out there. Many companies make it. It isn't a good and accepted procedure in certain circumstances. I did write an article indicating, and this is in zero way critical of Tua's physicians or what they did, etc. I'll try and tweet the link of it, or you can Google my name, Chao, C-H-O, and Tua and ankles. But this type of surgery that Tua had on both sides is not really done in the NFL. For example, Tua walked off the field and had a tightrope surgery and admittedly made a reasonable comeback, but so did Saquon Barkley, who limped off the field in crutches and a boot, and he made a 4-week comeback as well. So right now, is there a prophylactic value to the surgery? Is there an upside? Maybe. Are there specific circumstances about Tua or the Alabama players that are getting the tightrope surgery that I'm not aware of? Probably, because I haven't examined them. But on a global basis, currently this is done NFL league-wide.
Dr. David Chao, ProFootballDoc, ProFootballDoc.com, ProFootballDoc on the Twitter account. You can connect with him. Dr. David Chao, I thank you so much for your time. This has been so helpful to help us understand. Like I said, I've been in the business for going on 21 years, and we've always needed someone that can help us analyze injuries, and I think you have filled an amazing void that was there in our business, and I appreciate your time here in Tuscaloosa. I hope we can visit again very soon.
All right. Thank you much.